This evening we're taking on what must be on paper the worst business class flight in the world as we fly with British Airways in Club Europe from London Heathrow over to Tbilisi in Georgia. So why do I say that this might be the worst business class flight in the world? Well, firstly, we're going to be in the seat that's exactly the same as economy, but with the middle seat blocked out. Now that's pretty common practice in European business class. So what makes this worse? Well, firstly, it's over a 5-hour flight, making it one of the longest flights you can do in this configuration. But not only that, it's also an overnight red-eye flight. We're departing at 9:30 p.m. and landing into Tbilisi just after 5:30 a.m. So overnight in what's basically a short-haul economy seat that barely reclines and without any amenities. Please do let me know if you can think of a business class offering that sounds worse than that. So why do BA operate the flight in this way, and why on earth have we actually booked it? I'll explain all as we go through the experience, see how we get on, and find out if it actually is the worst in the world, or will we be pleasantly surprised? Let's get going. We've been wanting to travel to Georgia for ages, but for quite a few years there have been no direct routes from the UK, with a visit typically requiring a stopover in Istanbul. And after years of waiting for a direct route, suddenly two came along at once this year. One from Luton with easyJet, and this one with BA from Heathrow. So pretty much as soon as these routes were announced, we got it booked in. You might wonder why I went with BA over easyJet, given that the easyJet flight has significantly better flight time of 12:30, arriving into Tbilisi at 8:30 p.m, and in hindsight, maybe I should. But there were quite a few reasons why BA was our pick, which I'll explain a little later on in the video. When you're flying out of Heathrow Terminal 5, BA Business Class grants you priority check-in, fast-track security, and your choice of 3 different business class lounges. But thanks to BA Gold status, we were able to improve our ground experience slightly by heading through the first class wing. Security here was incredibly quick, really easy, and shockingly for airport security, very friendly as well. And after getting through security, you deposited straight in the first class lounge. Now this is a first class lounge in name only, because anyone actually flying first class with BA is going to be going from the Concorde route, making the first class lounge effectively one that's just there for status holders. Arriving in the evening, we made our way straight over to the food to get some dinner. There's a good range of food in the lounge, but most of it, to be honest, was fairly average quality. Not bad, but nothing too outstanding. The bar was really good though, and definitely the highlight. And then once we've finished eating, we made our way over to my favourite part of the lounge, which is the terrace area. Here you get plenty of natural light, views of the planes taking off, and over the summer, an ice cream stand. During the day, they do have someone serving ice cream with cones. They just closed that when we got there, but there were still tubs of ice cream available. So we were able to enjoy a little tub of ice cream for dessert and before heading over to the bar. I ordered up my go-to cocktail of a Negroni, while Kelly went for a Pimm's, and we were able to sit back, relax, and enjoy the views of the planes taking off. On all my previous visits to this lounge, it's been absolutely packed out, and I think a lot of that could be the times of the day that I'm in the lounge. One of the advantages of our late evening flight today did mean that there were a lot fewer people around, and it just made for a really nice, relaxing environment to sit back, enjoy a drink, enjoy the views as well, and just take care of any last minute pre-holiday admin that we needed to do. So I grabbed a glass of champagne and started looking through what are the best things to do in Tbilisi, booked the airport transfer to our hotel, started researching a few tours that we might want to do whilst we're over there, and then made sure that we both had a Georgian eSIM downloaded from Airalo. For the last year now, whenever I travel, before I've even set foot on the plane, I always make sure that I've downloaded an eSIM from Airalo, so I'm delighted to have them as a sponsor of today's video. Airalo has easily become one of my most valued travel tools, taking a lot of the stress and inconvenience out of travel, allowing me to quickly and easily download an eSIM so that I can start using mobile data the second the plane's wheels touch the ground, without facing the crazy high charges that I would get if I was just using my normal mobile data plan. So it means no more searching for Wi-Fi hotspots, and no need for the hassle of trying to buy a local SIM card at the airport, which I personally could never be bothered to do in the past. Right now, Airalo will give you $3 off your first eSIM with them when you click the link in the description, or if you use my QR code on screen now and use code CHARLES at checkout. With Airalo, you can download eSIMs in over 200 countries and regions, keeping you and over 15 million other travellers connected when you travel around the world. I'm using Airalo on this trip here in Tbilisi, Georgia. It's meant that when we first arrived, we were able to make contact with our airport pickup when we're still on the plane. It's also meant that when we've been walking around, if we've seen a restaurant that looks nice, I'm able to just quickly look up the reviews online, make sure it's got good food before we go in. We've never get lost when navigating around, and I was able to respond to comments here on YouTube when we were on a long bus ride. So click that link today to install Airalo for free and use my code CHARLES to get $3 off your first eSIM. And now let's get back to the flight. As soon as our gate was called, we made our way out of the lounge. It had been a really pleasant lounge experience. Something that I don't often say about BA just because of how crowded the lounges usually are. Now obviously if you don't have gold status and you have a business class ticket, you are just going to be accessing the business class lounges, and there are 3 here in Heathrow. The Galleries North lounge is pretty much always overcrowded and I wouldn't really recommend it. The one saving grace is it does have its own terrace area as well. The South lounge is the biggest of the lounges and the one you're probably most likely to find a seat in, but again it can get pretty overcrowded and it's not the nicest space, it's a bit dark in there. The B-Gates lounge is probably the nicest space, but because of so many people like me saying that is the nicest one, it does tend to get a bit busier now than it used to. Apologies for that. And obviously if you're departing from the A gates, there is then a bit of a transit to get back to your gate after you've been in the lounge. Arriving at our gate today, everything went nice and smooth, we weren't waiting around for too long and we were soon allowed on board. Our flight today was on an Airbus A320 in a 3-3 configuration, and thankfully it was the newest version of BA's planes. And we selected seats 1A and 1C for today's flight to try and benefit from a bit of extra leg room. I was quite surprised to see waiting at our seats that there was actually some bedding, so a blanket and a pillow, and both of them were pretty decent. I'd say the pillow was actually better than I've had in premium economy with BA in the past, although a closer inspection did show a few hairs that definitely weren't ours. There's a good amount of leg and knee room in the front row. The foot room is obviously cut off by the bulkhead, but you get a much better feeling of space in this front row. There's an armrest to the side, the headrest is pretty comfortable and fully adjustable, and overall it's a perfectly comfortable seat for a short haul flight, but definitely not my first choice for an overnighter. Above the seat there were individual air vents and reading lights, and between the 2 seats there's a smart tray table where you can put a few bits and pieces, and the main train table that you'd use for your meal folds out from the armrest like this. That does of course come with the cost that the seats up front are slightly narrower, but I did get a few bonus snacks left for me by the previous passenger, so can't complain too much. I tested out the recline to get an idea of what kind of sleep I could expect that evening, and I think my face probably says it all there. You really don't notice a huge difference when this is reclined, unfortunately. And then the last thing of note about the seat itself is that this being the latest version, it does have good charging options with a USB and USB-C charging port. No proper power outlets though, so if you were wanting to use a laptop, maybe not the best setup. Menus were handed out before departure and it was looking pretty good, to be honest. I wasn't really sure if I was going to eat or not on this flight. With it being a 9:30 PM departure and having already eaten in the lounge, I thought potentially I might avoid it, especially if the menu didn't look like much, but I did think this was worth giving a try. And we then experienced what I think is a BA Heathrow miracle, and we pushed back a few minutes early. I mentioned near the start of the video that despite the bad flight time, we'd picked this over EasyJet, so as we're taxiing and taking off, let me just explain the reasons why. So firstly, convenience. Luton is a bit of a pain for me to get to from my home in Newcastle, whereas BA have multiple daily flights from here down to Heathrow. That makes it really easy for us to book a connecting flight, get our luggage checked all the way, and we know that our status with BA will give us a pretty comfortable connection being able to use the lounges. The second reason was tier points. Now before BA gutted their loyalty scheme, this route was looking like an exceptional way to rack up status with BA. Their tier point calculator was showing that a business class flight on this route would offer 180 tier points each way, and if booked as a BA holiday, those would then double. This plus the connecting flights down to London would therefore have earned us 880 out of the 1,500 tier points that we would need for gold status, and at a very low cost as well. Now unfortunately that's not how tier points work anymore, but because we'd booked before the new scheme was announced, our points in theory should have been calculated so that we'd make the same progress towards gold as we would have in the old scheme. But looking at the numbers they've actually posted after the flight, it seems they've calculated based on it being the Heathrow to Tbilisi flight being 140 tier points, and no double tier points have been applied. I suspect I'll get nowhere with this, as ultimately that flight calculator was only giving their estimate ones. Ultimately the flights hadn't flown until they changed the scheme, so I probably don't have much of a leg to stand on, but I will raise this with BA and see if I can get an adjustment there. But I won't hold my breath. We got some fantastic sunset takeoff views from Heathrow. I sat in the window seat for takeoff and landing so that I could record, but I did swap over with Kelly once we were up in the air. She wasn't really interested in having any food, she just wanted to try her best to get to sleep as soon as possible. So once the seatbelt signs came off and the onboard service started up, we swapped over seats and I moved over to 1C, which as it turns out was a vastly inferior seat. Quite a few issues with this one, which I will cover through the rest of the video, but I will say straight away I wouldn't recommend seating here. If you can and you want to be in the front row, go to DNF instead. For starters, there's the placement of the seat, which seems to almost overhang the aisle. You'll be able to see where the line is on the floor of where the aisle starts, and it just kind of cuts halfway through the seat. It means that when people were boarding, they were bashing Kelly's leg and whacking her bag into her. And if you sit with your legs forward, people just trample you a bit. Kelly had brought along her first class eye mask to try and trick herself into thinking she was in a more luxurious space to get to sleep. And with that, the onboard service started with a round of drinks. I asked for a gin and tonic and I was kindly offered 2. And this was accompanied with a very tasty bag of nuts. As much as myself and others do talk about this being basically the economy seat, I think having that tray table next to you and being able to use the middle seat tray table as well does give you that bit of extra space that does make it a much more comfortable experience. And the food on this flight was very impressive too. The salmon was a little bit dry, but it was tasty and it came with a nice sauce. Nice biscuits and cheese too, although some of the rest of the food wasn't quite for me, so I did leave some of the things. And I somehow managed to spill the dessert all the way down my hoodie, so that was fantastic. I'll blame the double gins for that one. Made a quick stop in the loo, which was kept nice and clean throughout the flight. It is the same as the economy one, but you do get your nice White Company soap and hand lotion in there, so at least there is a small premium touch there. And then back in my seat, I'd intended to try and sleep straight away, but The Bear Season 4 had just come out and I just kind of kept clicking next episode a few times whilst I finished off my drinks. But when I did try and finally get to sleep, it was pretty futile, to be honest. Now, I don't sleep well in an upright seat at the best of times. Usually I only ever fall asleep in a seat like this if I'm trying to stay awake. But it's just not a comfortable way of trying to sleep at all. And it certainly wasn't helped by the shortcomings of this specific seat. The aisle seat is a lot narrower than 1A. That's because the left armrest for 1A has space underneath it, whereas in 1C you've got the tray tables for both seat B and C in the armrests there. Because the seat overhangs the entrance to the galley, you're constantly getting bashed by people as they walk past. The curtain in the galley doesn't close fully as well, so there's always light coming in, shining on your face. And whenever they open and close the curtain, which happens quite a lot, because of the way it hangs, it constantly is whacking your legs. Plus, you do also have to deal with the noise in the galley. Now, this is nothing on the crew were absolutely brilliant on this flight. It's not like they were doing anything that was creating any noise, it's just that people go through there, they ask them questions, or if people are ordering drinks or asking for snacks, then it's going to create some noise that's near that front seat. And the end result of all of that is that basically I didn't get any sleep at all. It's possible I may have dozed off for the odd 20 seconds here or there, but it can't have been for more than that. And even though Kelly did find that 1A seat a lot more comfortable, and she did compliment the blankets and the pillow, she also wasn't really able to get any sleep either. I think unless you're able to get a decent recline or something that lies flat, it's always going to be a struggle. But, long haul economy seat is going to recline a lot more than this short haul business class one can. So all in all, we arrived pretty wrecked from this flight. And it's a shame because the crew, I think, were absolutely brilliant on this. They were really friendly, really great service, very proactive. The seat is something that I'm very happy with on a short flight. And there was a really good food and drink service too. There's a lot that the flight could have going for it, but it's just unfortunately completely kneecapped by the time of day, and that operational decision to have the narrow body with this configuration on this length of flight and at that time just unfortunately spoils the experience. We booked this as a BA holiday, and all we could think upon landing was just getting to the hotel, praying that we'll be able to check in early, and at least try and get some kind of a nap so that the day wouldn't be a complete write-off. I got the message after we landed that our pickup was waiting for us, so we were able to make our way through. Thankfully, immigration didn't take too long. A bit of a long wait for the bag, or at least it felt like a long wait. It probably wasn't that bad at all, but when you're that tired, everything feels like a long wait. But eventually we had both of our cases, ready to head out into the rain and go find our hotel. We didn't have the greatest luck with weather on this trip. I think the week before we were there and the week after, it was glorious sunshine, really hot weather every day. We did have a few days like that, but a lot of it was also raining and dreary like this. But I would still really highly recommend a visit if you've not been. It's a beautiful place, especially when the sun's out. An incredibly affordable place to stay as well. We were told at the hotel that unfortunately we were too early for early check-in, but they allowed us to pay half the daily rate to be able to just go check in straight away. So I made our way up to the room on the 33rd floor and collapsed into bed. So it's been a few days and I have now finally been able to recover from the flight. It definitely took it out of us the first few days. Obviously that day one, we were absolutely wiped, had no energy at all. We just got in, crashed, we napped for a couple of hours, but we did set an alarm because we didn't want to completely knock off our body clock. But yeah, the first day we didn't really have energy to do anything other than just hang around the hotel, got a coffee, just tried to power through. We did a bit of a walk around the local area, but that was all we could really manage. But unfortunately, because of the nap we had, we didn't sleep amazing that first night either. So it probably took us a couple of days to get back on track and able to actually do things and explore Tbilisi. And ultimately, that is the big issue with this flight. I think given the operational decision to have the flight at that time and to have the narrow body plane, that is really going to affect your comfort, and it's really going to affect the quality of the sleep and how you feel when you arrive and what you're able to do. We needed a buffer of a few days before we were able to do anything. So, some people can operate better on no sleep than I can or than we can. But I think for most people, it's really going to affect your enjoyment of the trip. And it means that you can't really do a short trip over to Georgia if you're here just a couple of days. That said, I think given the restrictions that were in place, I think the crew couldn't have done a better job of making that a really comfortable experience, or at least as comfortable as it could have been. So I think doing that exact same flight on a daytime route would be absolutely fine. But I think an economy seat on a long-haul aircraft would offer a lot more comfort than business class on this aircraft, particularly for a flight of this length. Was it the worst business class flight in the world? Kind of. I think it's a bad flight just because of the time. I think, like I say, everything else that goes around with it is great. We had a good time in the lounge. The crew were fantastic. The meal was good. It was the latest plane they've got. They did provide some basic amenities like a blanket and a pillow, and they were really good ones, to be fair. But just the time of the flight and the duration on that aircraft just absolutely kills it off. So yeah, I couldn't recommend it really. I think you might be better off just choosing an indirect route from the UK. You could fly to somewhere like Dubai first, you could fly to somewhere like Turkey first. Turkey's probably the best option. Stay over a night or two, enjoy that, and then fly on to Georgia. Again, it means you need a longer trip, but your first couple of days are wiped out if you're flying direct here anyway. So I think if I was coming back, I would probably just go via Turkey, stay in Istanbul for a bit, and then go on. Do let me know in the comments if you think there is a worse route out there in business class. I'd be really interested to know. And if you want to see how this short-haul business class experience compares to what BA offer on their long-haul planes, watch this video next.